Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Hong Kong once again, and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are another relatively new addition to the Hong Kong beer scene. They're really quite interesting for me in the fact that they are the first Asian lager specialised craft brewery that I've ever come across, and I have been aware of them for a wee bit of time actually, thanks to my friend Luigi of Luigi Drinks on Instagram and Facebook. He's had a look at a number of beers from these guys, and they've just always kind of stuck in my mind because they're quite quirky and unusual. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I had never heard of before, and it just should be one that I think will test my palate, and that is what you want after 3,700 reviews on YouTube. You want things that will make you think a little bit. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. Hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this one, and most importantly, hopefully it's another good beer. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Tsing, which is just to the northwest of Kowloon, the city over the water from Hong Kong Island, and we're going to have a look then at my first beer from HK Lovecraft. So this particular beer is called the Enduring. It comes in at 10% ABV, and they're describing this one as a lager wine. So yeah, I am really not sure what to expect from this one. Untappd has it listed as an English style barley wine, but yeah, it's aged in a few different barrels from what I understand, and then it's been infused with whiskey as well. But this is another beer that I picked up from HK Brewcraft in Central on Hong Kong Island, who have supplied me with a good number of Hong Kong beers over the years. But yeah, this one I think should be really quite quirky and unusual, and I think Luigi told me this one is a pretty damn solid beer as well. But do make sure you check out his Instagram and Facebook pages. I'll put the links to those in the video description for you below. A lovely guy, and as I said, a little bit of a legend of the Hong Kong beer scene. So go and check out what he's doing. Really interesting stuff, and a very nice guy to boot. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from HK Brewcraft. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. Just go into the homepage, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You will find a playlist there for the Hong Kong beers, which will be added to a little bit over the next wee while, and I hope we can add to that more regularly going forward. And there are playlists for many different countries as well that you can also check out. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a wee look at my brewery notes then. So, HK Lovecraft, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in the Tsing area to the northwest of Kowloon in Hong Kong, and the company was founded back, I believe, in 2018 by Perry Lam. So Perry actually has a hell of a brewing pedigree behind him. He studied brewing at the Siebel Institute in Chicago in Illinois over in the US, and then also at the Domans Institute in Munich in Bavaria in Germany, where he completed the Master Brewing Program, and this made him the first officially certified Master Brewer in the whole of Hong Kong. So the brewery is equipped with a 2,000 litre Braucon kit from Germany, and it focuses on the brewing of lagers. But Perry constructed the brewery with his own money, and they released their first beers in the summer of 2018. But over the years, Perry has continued to develop new recipes, and the beers have won a number of awards. But yeah, he has done some really, really interesting things. Like I say, I've seen Luigi review some really quite quirky stuff from these guys, but the brewery name is actually a play on the name H.P. Lovecraft, the American author who was instrumental in the cosmic horror genre. But it's said that the Lovecraftian genre centres around the fear of the unknown, and the idea that Perry had was that many people are not really aware of craft beer, and he wants to reflect that in his kind of branding, and that is apparently shown on the images that you'll find on the HK Lovecraft beers. But like I said, these guys specialise in the brewing of lagers. You'll find Helles lagers, Pilsners, Dunkels, Bocks, all these kind of things from HK Lovecraft. As of April 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced approximately 45 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. If you want to learn more though, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a wee look at this beer itself. So like I said to you earlier on, this one is a 10% lager wine, a style that I had never come across before in my 10 years of doing the channel. So yeah, that was the main reason that it caught my eye. So yeah, you can see the artwork on this one is pretty nice. I think I will have to keep the bottle of this beer afterwards, just because it's such an unusual style that I don't think you're ever going to come across again. But yeah, there you can see the HK Lovecraft symbol on the label there. You can see as well that this beer has this sort of black painted bottle, and we haven't seen these since I first reviewed the Yardley Brothers beers back in 2019, and they've since started using, I guess you could say, normal bottles. But you can see lovely wax top on this one, and you can also see the Lovecraft symbol there on the label, on the wax top there, which is very nice. But yeah, lovely artwork on this one. 330ml bottle. As I said earlier, this beer was bought at HK Brewcraft in Central in Hong Kong. I honestly can't remember what I paid for this one, but yeah, I think it would have been somewhere in the region of like £10. I honestly can't remember now. But yeah, the description of this beer is also quite interesting. I'm just going to read this straight to you from Untappd, actually, because it explains the beer pretty well. So it says here, we aged the beer with multi-level toasted French oak and with the addition of Scotch whisky to further elevate the complexity and character of the beer. This deep copper beer has a medium to full body. It brings forth a strong aroma and flavour of dark fruits such as plums and raisins with a taste of toffee, and completes with a smooth whisky finish. Notes of dark chocolate and coffee attributed by the oak also enhance the complexity of the body of the beer. So yeah, as I say, sounds pretty damn interesting. But yeah, the very first time I've ever come across a lager wine. So yeah, let's just crack this guy open and see what it's all about. The enduring lager wine, oak aged and whisky infused, from HK Lovecraft in Tsing, near Kowloon in Hong Kong. So yeah, let's just turn the screen off and focus on the beer for now. Yeah. So yeah, bottle cap's intact. That's pretty nice. You can see a little bit of the beer did want to escape there, but not too much. We'll be careful with the pour of this one as we go. But yeah, this does look very, very nice actually. So yeah, do let me know in the comment section below if you guys have come across any other lager wines anywhere. As I say, a style that I am completely unfamiliar with. So yeah, let me just reposition this so it looks nice for the video. And yeah, you can see when this beer poured, it had a half finger, I would have said frothy, kind of medium beige head. Certainly not the darkest of beiges that I've come across, but that has just faded away to be a little bit of a kind of, just to give you a few kind of foamy dots on the top, and then you've got that nice kind of fawn coloured ring around the edge of the glass. But I'll just let you have a wee look at that. You can see smaller bubbles there, but a few medium sized ones as well, and you also have this lovely kind of dark ebony rosewood colour to the beer. If we shine the light through it, it does show you a little bit of a kind of dark ruby or dark chestnut tint. But yeah, remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put in will affect the colour of your beer to a degree as well. Normally with imperial stouts and things, it's quite difficult to affect the colour of the beer. because of the presence of the black malt, but with more kind of brown sugary beers such as barley wines, doppelbocks, quadruples. I'll also include the lager wine in that category because it certainly looks as if it's a more kind of brown sugary leaning beer. Yeah, I can imagine that barrel aging and adjuncts would affect the colour of these beers quite a bit. But yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass and a few little ones coming up toward the surface there. But overall, it does look pretty nice, and it looks pretty much along the lines of like a long boil barley wine or doppelbock or something like that. But yeah, as I say, there's a few different kinds of barley wine: English barley wine, American barley wine. You've got wheat wines and rye wines and stuff like that as well. But yeah, this is the first time I've come across a lager wine, I have to say. So yeah, I don't know if it's just like if it's essentially like a barley wine brewed with a lager yeast or something like that. I really don't know what the technical definition of a lager wine would be, but I would guess it would be something like that. Maybe it's like a cold IPA, but just you know, brewed with a much higher alcohol content with all the features of a barley wine. Could well be that. But yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and just see what it's all about. Yeah, I have to say that's really pretty interesting. Yeah, first impression of it is it's really not dissimilar to like a mixture of doppelbock and kind of, yeah, barley wine, to be honest with you. It's kind of somewhere in the middle of that. Yeah, lots of kind of brown sugar in there, good little bit of kind of oily red fruit, and then a wee bit of like a more noble type hoppy character. So yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, it's a little bit like a mixture of a doppelbock and some kind of barley wine, to be honest with you. So yeah, let's take a wee look at that aroma a bit more in depth. I think this is always an interesting thing to do when you're trying new craft beers. But yeah, for me, a lot of doppelbock character to this one, to be honest with you. It does remind me of like a souped up version of like an Eisbock or something like that. But yeah, so backbone of the beer, absolutely, you can smell that lovely kind of oaky character in there. And for me, it strikes me as being more European oak. We know that there's some French oak in this one, and I've always found, as I've said in many reviews before, for me, European oak is a little bit drier than its American counterpart, and you can certainly get a little bit of that in this one. There are like little hints of vanilla in here, I would say, so you can certainly pick up that on the nose. But yeah, for me, that's really nice. Lovely little bit of smoothness from the oak, but also that little bit of extra dryness you get from European oak, a little bit of woody character, but then you start to get the nice bready notes out of this one. There's certainly a little bit of a kind of drier, rye bready bread crust coming out of this beer. And yeah, that's kind of forming the backbone of the beer. You've also got a little bit of a kind of cakey note to this one. It smells a little bit like Christmas pudding, and I'm quite familiar with that aroma because my dad was born in the middle of February, loves Christmas pudding. My mum always used to make him a Christmas pudding for his birthday cake. So yeah, this one really smells like, you know, English Christmas pudding. Like a caramelised, just cakey sort of thing, like the sort of roasty stuff that sticks to the edge of the baking tray in there. But yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So yeah, big cakey notes out of this one. There is a slightly sweeter rye bread kind of fruit loaf thing sitting above that, and then you start to get some of the more brown sugary notes out of the beer. There is a little bit of a leathery brown sugar to this one, but not overly much. It's actually really yeah, the brown sugary notes in this beer are really, they are in a way very oily and very sweet, but they're not yeah, they're not madly caramelised, if that makes sense. So I don't think this beer has had too long a wort boil. You can always tell if the brown sugars are a little bit drier in beers, and that's a common thing to do in barley wines actually, is to give them a slightly longer wort boil, but you don't have the kind of leathery dryness in the brown sugars here that you would have if that had been the case. For me, it's a very oily, kind of treacly molasses sort of thing you get out of this one. There's a little hint of nutty character in there as well, but definitely a little bit of a kind of sweet straight up caramel, also like maybe wee hints of kind of butterscotch and stuff like that, and maybe a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit. Definitely wee bits of things like that going on in this one. But yeah, I get more and more kind of nuttiness and cakiness out of this beer the longer that I sit and smell it. So yeah, I do like how that goes together, definitely. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the kind of malty and yeasty side of this beer, actually. So on the hoppy side of things, I'm not sure if this beer has been barrel aged or if they've just put wood chips in it. We'll be able to tell a little bit more in the flavour, because if it's barrels, then you know, the woody character is a bit smoother, whereas if it's chips, it usually is a little bit drier. A little bit harder to tell with European oak in that case, because it is inherently drier in my experience. But anyway, but yeah, if this has been barrel aged, a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one. But I would suspect, considering Perry's love of German beers, I would not be surprised if the hops used in this one were Northern Brewer from Germany, which is a very popular hop to use in Doppelbocks. And there's just, like I say, something very familiar about this beer from the hoppy and fruity side of things. So you do get a little bit of earthiness out of it, and it's a very smooth earthiness, which is characteristic of German noble hops. There's a little bit of herbal character in there, and you've got a kind of smooth and bright floral aromaticity and grassiness to this one. So that's really what makes me think it's a German hop that's in this particular beer. And as I say, if it's a beer like this, then I would expect it to be Northern Brewer, to be honest with you. You know, they could have used a little bit of English Bramling's Cross. It's quite popular in English barley wines. But yeah, the green character out of this one comes across as very smooth. But the thing to remember is that if it's barrel aged, a lot of the green component from the hops would have dropped out in this one. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind. Let's have a wee look at the fruity character then, just to round off our take on the aroma here. So yeah, for me, you've got quite a lot of dried red fruity character to this one. It's got a wee touch of a kind of plummy note to it. So he says you've got that oily kind of plum, but underneath you've got the drier prune. There's a few kind of raisiny, sultana and slightly peary notes to this one. But for me, it doesn't have the kind of raisiny sharpness, actually, which is kind of interesting. We'll maybe get some of that in the flavour, but I do get quite a little bit of black currant and maybe a wee bit of oily blackberry for this one. But it's actually a little bit of a kind of dry, phenolic, fruity character that I get out of this one. So yeah, as I say, there is a wee touch of raisin to this one, but not too much. Quite a lot of plum for me, and some prune underneath, some pear and sultana type qualities. Then a bit of fig for sure. There's definitely some fig in here, and some blackberry and black currant. Actually, I get more and more black currant out of it the more that I smell of it, I have to say. So yeah, aroma wise, this beer is really quite interesting, actually. So yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to just enjoy the aroma before you get stuck in. But I think it is about time that we try this one. So yeah, this beer is called The Enduring, a lager wine at 10% ABV from HK Lovecraft in Tsing, to the northwest of Kowloon in Hong Kong. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, Gambe. Yeah. This is quite interesting. I'm going to say straight away, this beer, it's quite like a very sharp and red fruity Doppelbock. It has got a wee bit of barley wine character to it, right enough, but it gives you a lot of dryness the further into the aftertaste you go. But it really is a mix of Doppelbock and barley wine. This one, it really is, but it has a wee bit of that sharper. It's almost like a slightly oxidised red fruity character that you get out of this one, which is quite unusual, I have to say. But yeah, it is certainly quite a nice beer. Yeah, This is definitely going to be something that tests my palate a little bit. So, yeah, we can start with this one then. Middle third of your palate, as we always do. So, the backbone there, you've got a little bit of that drier, woody character coming out of this one. And as I said earlier, for me, European oak is quite a bit drier than American oak is. So yeah, that lovely dry European oaky character in there. And you can feel within that woody character that there's a little bit of... I wonder if it's like cognac barrels or something like that, because you do get that dry, kind of sultana-y, cognac-y type note from the wood as well. But as you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you can feel there is just a little hint of vanilla in there. But at the same time, above the sort of you've got the woody layer, then the kind of spirit sugar just sitting on top of it. You can feel a little bit of the whiskey sitting there as well. And the whiskey side of this beer is interesting too, because it has a wee bit of dryness to it. I wouldn't be surprised if the whiskey that they've used in this one is more of a kind of Speyside type whiskey. It has a wee bit of dryness to it, but also a little bit of smoothness. It could also be a lowland one. I'm not really sure about Highland. I'd be curious to know what whiskey they've used in this one. It may well not even be Scotch, but no, it says Scotch whiskey on the bottle actually. So yeah, it is Scotch whiskey. In that case, then it's something a little bit drier. I really don't know what it could be, to be honest, in that sense. There are quite a few nice dry whiskies out there. Campbelltown has a little bit of that dryness and saltiness to it. It's maybe the first thing that comes to mind, actually. But probably wrong on that one. It has a bit of the Speyside smoothness too. But yeah, like I say, the main thing is you've got that woody backbone there with a little bit of dryness, the kind of cognac-y type spirit above that, then a wee bit of the smooth whiskey. But above that, you start to get the kind of barley wine and doppelbocky elements of this beer. So you can feel there's a little bit of a drier, bread crusty character in there. So, yeah, you can feel that that kind of bread crusty character. Above that, you actually get a kind of thin layer of an almost cakey type quality of this one. Like I said, it reminds me a little bit of the kind of brandy soaked Christmas pudding type thing, and then you've got a more kind of brown rye bready character sitting on top of that, and then a wee bit of a more wholemeal brown bready character. It's very layered, this beer. Now I have to say, I don't really you do get a little bit of a... I'm always sceptical about saying chocolate flavours in doppelbocks and barley wines and stuff like that. For me, these beers are more about brown sugar. Now, for me, this is one area I would say that the beer, the flavour of the beer diverges a little bit from the aroma, because above the kind of bready layers that I've just mentioned, you do get this little bit of a more leathery, brown sugary kind of character in there. So I do like that about this one, but I can see why some people would say it's chocolate, particularly toward the back of that middle third of your palate, because you do get an almost like cocoa nibby type dryness there. So yeah, that's quite an interesting point to make about this beer. But like I say, above the brown bread, you've got a little bit of that leathery brown sugar, and yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you maybe have a little bit of a more oily kind of caramelly note, but you can feel as you move out from that, you start to get a drier, and it just gets progressively drier and drier, and it's almost a little touch biscuity, and then you get these dry, more leathery, brown sugary notes out of this one there. So yeah, most of the complexity in this beer, I have to say, is in that middle third of your palate, and I think that's everything that we need to say about this one. The only other thing I can think of is that you, toward the front of the middle third of your palate, you start to get a wee touch of nuttiness coming out of this beer. So yeah, that gets a thumbs up from me as well. So yeah, interesting stuff. On the yeah, I think on the middle third of the palate, that's it. But if you go to the back third of the palate, in the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you can feel there's a little touch of kind of bready build-up in this one. And it's kind of a brown, rye bready sort of flavour, a little bit dry actually. But again, you can feel the base of that back third of the palate is giving you something similar. As I've always said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, drier flavours come out further back. But yeah, you can feel the bready, the sort of woody character on the back third of the palate is even drier. Both the kind of cognac-y spirit and the whiskey spirit that sit above that feel a bit drier too. The kind of the sort of bread crusty layer feels even drier. Then you've got the cakey layer, which feels a little bit more taller and more airy. Then you've got the kind of brown rye bread and brown bready layers, which are sitting there as well, and they're a little bit taller and more airy again. But above all of that, on the back third of the palate, you start to get some of the yeasty flavours coming out of the beer, and the yeast in this one for me is quite interesting. So I would certainly say that the yeasty side of the beer, it's a little bit more, it is a little bit more, it's like a really dry, woody character that comes out of this one, but it has just a little bit more kind of fruitiness to it, and it almost feels like it's got a little bit of an almost oxidised nature to it. The fruity side on that yeasty part of the beer. So yeah, dry kind of farmhousey bread in there, a little bit of oxidised kind of fruity note, and yeah, a lot of woody character I would think. So that sits above all those kind of the brown bready layers and the rye bready layers that I thought about too. So yeah, it's really interesting. The back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller, and then as you move further forward, you can feel the flavours just kind of condensed down and squashed together that little bit more. So yeah, really interesting how this beer goes about its business from the malty and yeasty side of things. But I think that is everything we need to say on those two parts of the flavour. So yeah, let's go forward and have a wee look at the hoppy side of things. So like I said earlier, if you have got a barrel aged beer, a lot of the hoppy character is going to drop out of it, and I can feel a little bit of that going on in this one in terms of the flavour, but I don't think, you know, overly much of it has dropped out. For me, in the back corners of the palate, you do get a little touch of earthiness in there. Then as you move further forward, there's a little bit of herbal character, and yeah, it's very smooth, and for me again that kind of points to it being a German hop. But as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, there's a little bit of floral aromaticity in there, and then round the front curve of the tongue it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, but there is a wee touch of zestiness in there as well. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. But I would, you know, if I was a betting man, I would say it's I've got a feeling this is a bit of Bramling's, not Bramling's Cross, a little bit of Northern Brewer from Germany that's in this one, a very popular hop to use in Doppelbock. So yeah, let's focus on the front third of the palate then, and the fruity side of things from the hops themselves. So yeah, the base of that front third of your palate, you can feel that the border region between front and middle third of your palate, you can feel it's just a little bit of a bready build up in there. Kind of a sweet, like wholemeal brown bready kind of character. Then the base of that, front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of brown bready, and yeah, you've got a little bit of bread, like, how do we say? You've got a little bit of the woody character, the dryness of the wood. Then a sweet bread crusty kind of character in there, and then above that, like a sweeter wholemeal brown bready note there. But above that, you've got that nice oily bubble where the fruity juicy esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at these fruit flavours. We'll look at the impact that they make first, because there is a wee touch of the raisiny character in the flavour that I wasn't picking up in the aroma. So yeah, for me, when you take this beer in, it definitely has a little bit more of a kind of raisiny sharpness. And if we go to the back half of that front third of your palate, you'll feel the raisiny sharpness is in there. Then as you go further down from that, you start to get a little bit of the plums as well, then a more kind of dry prune, and the base of that, the back half of that front third of your palate, you have a little bit of a kind of sultana and oily pear kind of character in there. That comes out a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. But as you move further forward to the centre of that front third of your palate, there's a wee bit more. There's a wee bit more of a there's a wee bit more. Yeah, as I say, there's a wee bit more of a kind of oily, peary type note to it, and there's also that little bit of a more kind of figgy character as well. Yeah, as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you get more of a kind of black curranty character, and above that, like a sharper blackberry as well. And that, for me, is a really quite interesting point about this beer. It does get a little bit sharper the further you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, I think that is very interesting. Yeah, like I say, this beer, it really is like it has a little bit of barley wine character to it. To me, it really leans more toward the Doppelbock side of things, but it has this kind of almost like oxidized fruity sharpness to it, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I like that about this beer. It's a really interesting one, and as I say, it has tasted my palate a little bit, which is what you want after 3,700 reviews. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the kind of flavour side of things. Let's just round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, for me, this beer, it's actually mid-bodied. It's right in the middle of the spectrum. Kind of bottom end of mid-bodied, I would say, though the carbonation is very smooth. It does have that wet kind of mouthfeel as you would expect from a lager beer. You know, even I've had Doppelbocks that are lower in alcohol than this, but feel a little bit thicker. I would say that the mouthfeel on this one is quite light, to be honest with you. So yeah, quite wet, quite smooth, but as I say, just a little touch oily as well. In terms of IBUs, it's a bit hard to say with this one. It says on the bottle that it's 28, but I would say honestly, I don't know if I would have guessed that. I feel that this beer gets a little bit drier the further into the aftertaste that you go. So for me, with this one, it would be quite easy to conflate the bitterness and the dryness, actually, because yeah, you get more and more of that woody dryness the further into the aftertaste you go. But I don't find this one overly bitter, to be honest with you. In terms of the malty base, like we said, there's quite a little bit of dryness from the woody side of things, although yeah, technically that's not part of the malty base, but yeah, you get a wee bit of dryness from the bready layers. You do get a little bit of sweetness further on, but like I say, the further into the aftertaste you go with this beer, I feel it gets drier and drier. The fruity side of the beer has a little bit of sharpness to it, a little bit of a sharper impact, then it shows you it's more kind of dry fruity characteristics. But yeah, overall, I think this one is really quite nice. Like I say, it's quite like a Doppelbock, but it just has these kind of more sharp and almost oxidized type fruity flavours. So yeah, I like this. I do like how this goes together, and the woody nature of this beer and the kind of cognac-y and Scotch whisky notes are quite interesting too. So yeah, I have to say my first experience of HK Lovecraft has been one that has tasted my palate. I think this is quite interesting, but I'll need to try something maybe a little bit more conventional from them next time. I always enjoy a good Helles or a Dunkel or a regular Doppelbock, so I think that'll be my next port of call for my beers from HK Lovecraft. But yeah, really interesting first encounter with these guys, and it shows you that Perry is willing to experiment a little bit and do things that are a bit more unusual. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Enduring 10% lager wine with Scotch whisky and French oak. A really, really interesting beer, and yeah, very interesting first encounter with this brewery, as I've said already. So yeah, let's leave it there. As I say, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from HK Lovecraft as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the future when it is possible. But until the next time, slàinte, skål, cheers, Check out my social media, check out HK Lovecraft social media, check out my friend Luigi at Luigi Drinks, and I will see you guys in the next one. This was the Enduring, a lager wine at 10% ABV from HK Lovecraft in Tsing to the northwest of Kowloon in Hong Kong. Slanjit, Skål, cheers, Gambe.